The chandeliers glowed warmly in the grand Marcellus estate, their golden light bouncing off marble floors and silk drapes. But despite the glamour of the night, Elena Rossi felt like a prisoner dressed in ivory. The satin gown clung to her trembling frame, her veil carefully pinned into her chestnut hair, her lips painted into a smile she did not feel. Around her, guests whispered, raising glasses in celebration. But she knew the truth. This wedding was not born of love but of obligation, a business deal sealed between two powerful families. The Marcellus family owned a shipping empire, the Rossi family, an international banking firm. Both stood on the edge of collapse, their debts suffocating them. And so, like pawns on a chessboard, Elena and Damian Marcellus had been maneuvered into marriage. Elena's father had said it in a single sentence, cold and final. "You will marry him. Our future depends on it." Damian Marcellus stood beside her at the altar, tall, broad-shouldered, and devastatingly handsome in his tailored suit. His dark eyes, however, were filled with ice. He did not look at her as the priest spoke the vows. He stared past her, his jaw clenched as if he could not wait for this charade to end. When the priest instructed them to seal their vows with a kiss, Damian's lips barely brushed hers. The crowd erupted in applause, but Elena felt nothing but a hollow ache in her chest. Later, in the ballroom, music swirled, couples danced, and champagne flowed. Elena sat at the head table, forcing a polite smile as strangers congratulated her on her happy union. Damian remained by her side, but he didn't spare her a word. Finally, unable to bear the suffocating silence, Elena whispered, "We should at least try to look civil." Damian turned to her, his voice low and laced with disdain. "I didn't ask for this marriage. And I don't want your company. Don't mistake this arrangement for anything more than what it is, a contract." The words sliced through her, but she straightened her spine. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of him. When the night dragged on and the last of the guests departed, the newlyweds were escorted to their lavish suite. The room smelled faintly of roses, the bed covered in silk sheets, petals scattered across it. Elena's hands trembled as she unclasped her earrings. She wasn't naive. She knew what was expected on a wedding night. Her cheeks flushed as she glanced at Damian, who stood at the window, loosening his tie, the city lights painting his silhouette. "You don't have to pretend," he said coldly, sensing her unease. "I won't touch you. Not tonight. Not ever." Her breath caught. "What?" He turned, his eyes sharp. "I despise being forced. And I despise being tied to someone I never chose. So do not think for a moment that I will play the role of your doting husband." His rejection stung deeper than she imagined. 1,000 retorts burned on her tongue, but only one left her lips. "Perhaps you're not the only one forced into this, Damian." For a moment, silence fell between them. He blinked, as if surprised she dared answer back. But then, with a bitter scoff, he turned away. "We'll stay married for appearances. Beyond that, you're nothing to me." Hours later, when the lights dimmed and the house fell into silence, Elena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Damian slept on the couch across the room, his back to her, the distance between them colder than the marble floors of the estate. She closed her eyes, swallowing her tears, and whispered to herself. "You don't know me, Damian. And one day, you'll regret underestimating me." What neither of them knew was that the wedding night would not end with silence. A secret, one carefully hidden from the world, was about to unravel. And when it did, everything between them would change. The night stretched on with silence pressing between them like a wall. Damian, sprawled on the velvet couch, pretended to sleep. Elena, restless, lay wide awake, the moonlight brushing her pale face through the tall windows. Every time she shut her eyes, she heard his words echo, "You're nothing to me." But as the clock struck past midnight, a faint sound broke through the stillness, soft, deliberate taps against the glass balcony doors. Elena's heart skipped. She sat up, her veil discarded, her gown now wrinkled from the bed. At first she thought she had imagined it, but the sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. Her eyes darted to Damian, whose breathing remained steady. Quietly, she slipped from the bed and padded to the balcony. Pulling aside the curtain, she froze. A man cloaked in black stood on the terrace, half hidden by shadows. Her instinct screamed danger, yet something in his posture, a subtle bow of his head, suggested he wasn't there to harm her. Before she could speak, the man pressed a finger to his lips, then held out a small envelope. Elena's breath trembled as she reached for it through the glass. But just as her fingertips brushed the paper, Damian's sharp voice cut through the room. "What the hell are you doing?" Elena gasped and turned. Damian was already on his feet, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. He strode across the room and yanked open the balcony doors. The stranger was gone, vanished into the night like smoke. Damian whirled to her. "Who was that?" I don't know," Elena stammered, clutching the envelope to her chest. His gaze flickered to it. "Give it to me." Her fingers tightened. "No." The single word shocked even her. She had never defied him before, but something deep inside urged her to hold her ground. Damian's jaw clenched. He stepped closer, his towering frame shadowing hers. "Do you realize how dangerous this looks?" he growled. "A strange man sneaking into our wedding suite. If the press..." "This has nothing to do with the press." Elena shot back, surprising them both with the strength in her voice. For a long moment, they stared at each other, a storm brewing in his dark eyes. Finally, with a bitter laugh, Damian stepped back. "Fine. Keep your little secrets. But remember, whatever mess you drag into this marriage, I won't clean it up." He returned to the couch, but his eyes stayed on her long after she sat down, her heart hammering. When he finally drifted into restless sleep, Elena unfolded the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single piece of paper with a handwritten note. "The truth must never reach him. Keep the vow you made, or everything you love will burn." Her blood ran cold. She read it again and again, the words gnawing at her. The vow, the truth, the secret she had buried so deep it haunted every breath. She pressed the paper to her lips, whispering to herself. "They found me, even here." The following days passed in icy tension. Damian played the role of dutiful husband in public, his hand lightly resting on hers at business dinners, his lips brushing her cheek for photographs. But the moment the cameras were gone, so was the pretense. He avoided her, retreating into work and late nights at the office. Elena, meanwhile, lived with the weight of the letter pressing against her chest like a stone. At times she wanted to tell him, confess everything, beg for help, but his coldness stopped her. He wouldn't believe her. He didn't even want her. Yet fate twisted the knife when she stumbled into his study one evening. Damian sat behind his mahogany desk, a glass of whiskey untouched at his side. His head was in his hands. For the first time, he didn't look like the untouchable businessman. He looked lost. Quietly, Elena asked, "Rough day?" He looked up, startled by her softness. For a fleeting moment, his gaze softened too. Then, like a shutter slamming down, he masked it with arrogance. "You don't need to worry about my life." But she caught it, the crack in his armor. The pain beneath. And she realized something. Damian despised her, yes, but perhaps not out of hatred alone. There was something else lurking in him. A wound. Still, she couldn't let herself care. She had her own wound to guard. That night, as she lay awake again, Damian shifted on the couch, muttering in his sleep. His voice, raw, broke the silence. "No, don't leave me. Please, don't." Her chest tightened. He sounded like a broken boy, not the cruel man she knew. She turned her face away, tears slipping down her cheeks. Neither of them knew it yet, but the secrets they carried, the vow she had made, the ghosts he kept buried, were bound to collide. And when they did, their fragile hatred would ignite into something far more dangerous. Something neither of them could control. The days grew into weeks, and the marriage became a dance of shadows. Damian kept his distance, his bitterness a constant thorn, while Elena lived in dread of the letter hidden inside her dresser. But fate has a way of cornering secrets. It began on a stormy evening, when Damian returned home earlier than expected. Elena was in the library, clutching the letter in trembling hands, debating whether to burn it. She hadn't heard him come in. Interesting, his voice cut through the quiet. Elena spun around. Damian stood at the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, his eyes locked on the paper in her hand. "So this is what you've been hiding." Her blood turned to ice. "It's not what you think." He strode forward, snatched the letter, and scanned its contents. His expression darkened. "The truth must never reach me. A vow. What the hell is this, Elena?" She shook her head, panic rising. "Damian, please, you don't understand." "No," he snapped, slamming the paper on the desk. "You will explain, right now. Or I'll assume you've been lying to me since the moment you walked down that aisle." Tears welled in her eyes. The secret she had vowed to protect clawed at her throat, begging to be freed. Finally, she whispered, "Fine. I'll tell you." But once I do, nothing will ever be the same. Dash dash dash. She sank into the chair, her hands trembling. A year ago, before this marriage was arranged, I made a vow. Not to my family. Not to yours. To someone else. Damian's eyes narrowed. Who? My brother. He froze. Your brother. Elena, you don't have a brother. Her voice cracked. I did. His name was Luca. He was younger than me, brilliant, reckless. He uncovered something dangerous, illegal deals your father was involved in. He tried to expose them. Damian's breath caught, though he tried to mask it. They silenced him, she whispered. He died because of it. And before he died, I vowed to protect the evidence he left behind. If I failed, everyone I love would be in danger. That's the vow the letter warns me about. Someone knows I still have it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Damian's face was pale, his jaw tight. You're lying, he said hoarsely, though his voice lacked conviction. I wish I were, Elena whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. She reached into her gown's inner seam and pulled out a tiny flash drive, the one thing she had carried close for a year. This is the proof. The secrets your father killed for. Dash dash dash. For the first time, Damian looked shaken. His hand hovered, reluctant, before he took the drive. He stared at it like it was poison. My father, his voice faltered. You're saying my father eliminated my brother, she finished softly. And if this truth ever comes out, your family's empire collapses. That's why I was forced to marry you, Damian. Not just to save my family. But because it was the only way to keep this close, to protect Luca's legacy. They thought you'd never suspect your own wife. Damian staggered back, running a hand through his hair, the weight of betrayal crushing him. He had despised her for being forced into his life, never realizing she had carried a burden heavier than his own. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? She looked at him, broken. Because you hated me. Because you wouldn't have believed me. Because I was afraid you'd choose your father over the truth. Dash dash dash. The storm outside raged, thunder echoing through the walls. Damian sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Memories of his father, strict, ruthless, yet seemingly honorable, clashed with the horror of Elena's words. He remembered his own nightmares, the voice he had cried out in sleep, don't leave me. Maybe it wasn't about being abandoned by Elena. Maybe it was about the lies and shadows he had been raised in, shadows that had finally caught him. When he lifted his head, his eyes met hers. For the first time, there was no hatred. Only raw, aching truth. Elena. His voice was low, unsteady. I've despised you for being forced into my life. But I see now, you were just as much a prisoner as I was. Her tears fell faster, her lips trembling. He rose, stepping closer, his hand hesitating before cupping her cheek. You've carried this alone. You shouldn't have. You don't have to anymore. The distance between them shattered. For the first time, Damian pulled her into his arms, not out of duty, not for appearances, but because he wanted to. Dash dash dash. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Damian confronted his father with the evidence, the empire quaking under the weight of truth. Betrayal cut deep, but Damian chose to protect Elena instead of burying her secret. Together, they faced threats, scandals, and the storm of media chaos. Yet in the chaos, something fragile bloomed. Where there had once been disdain, there was now trust. Where there had been distance, there was closeness. And where hatred had festered, love began to grow. Dash dash dash. One evening, long after the storm had passed, Damian and Elena stood on the same balcony where the letter had first appeared. The city lights shimmered below, but Damian's gaze was on her. You changed everything, he whispered. Not the way I expected, not the way I wanted. But maybe the way I needed. She smiled softly, laying her hand over his. And you taught me that sometimes, even the coldest walls can break. Their lips met, this time not out of obligation, but out of something far greater. The marriage that had begun in chains had become their freedom. And the secret that once threatened to destroy them, had bound them together forever.